All right, this is Chapter 10, Media Ethics, Part 1, Ethics, Morals, and Laws. As you already probably know, ethics is a branch of philosophy that examines moral questions or questions of right and wrong. Ethics and laws, though, are not the same thing. Many unethical actions are actually not illegal. Major systems of ethical reasoning. While there is no single underlying unified ethical system, two scholars, Willem Naher and Paul Sandin, have developed a classification system that singles out character or virtue ethics or duties or consequences in relationships. And this is one of the texts that they published called Communicating Ethically. Major systems of ethical reasoning. Character or virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is the oldest of the ethical systems and has roots in some of our earliest religions. Courage, modesty, stoicism, chastity, honesty, selfishness, and other character traits are counted among them. The emphasis on character touches on fundamental aspects of what makes us human. The golden rule. We're all familiar probably with the idea of the golden rule, which is a virtue-based ethic in Judeo-Christian beliefs that calls for one to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Another such principle is love thy neighbor as thyself. Another type of rule is the golden mean. This virtue-based ethic, expounded by Aristotle and Confucius, teaches us that the most ethical way of living is to find a balance between two extremes. This middle way may shift as extremes and situations shifts though. And then finally, virtue ethics in action. One of the virtues in the news business is supposed to be transparency. This virtue was challenged not too long ago when television stations were required to disclose the sources and amounts of political advertising that they had received. In the end, only the four major networks and stations in the top markets had to provide this information. Duties. The idea of a virtue-based ethical system is that an individual has a choice to behave in a certain moral way and follow prescribed frameworks. This system differs from a duty-based ethical approach in which the individual's choice is eliminated in favor of following a restrictive set of rules. The categorical imperative was first showcased by German philosopher Immanuel Kant, and this duty-based approach he suggested is one to create moral laws that would apply to everyone. So, for example, when a media organization has decided to decline ads from a tobacco company, this would actually showcase the refusal to make a lucrative deal based on the earlier decision. Kant referred to this unconditional moral obligation as a categorical imperative. An individual acts for the benefits of others first and not for personal gain, which oftentimes goes against what we believe in within westernized and American society because we are highly individualistic instead of being collectivist. Discourse ethics. German social theorist Jürgen Habermas, who you may have also heard of in social science as well, says that communication, when practiced without bias or coercion, is an ethical act brought about through the process of rational interaction or argument. To decide on a proper course of action, media officials should open discussion to all involved so that everyone can weigh the merits of the arguments. And finally, duties-based ethics in action. Rupert Murdoch, who owns News Corp, also owned the British tabloid newspaper called News of the World, which published its last issue in July of 2011. It closed after 168 years on the market because this news outlet was part of a shocking media scandal in which journalists had hacked the phones of celebrities, including Prince William, sports stars, politicians, and families of crime victims. Additionally, they had also been responsible for eavesdropping, and journalists were also responsible for bribing policemen and women for information for stories. The misconduct might have been prevented if editors and journalists at the tabloid had kept their duties in mind. Also, keep in mind that Rupert Murdoch also owns what we know as Fox News, which is an entity within the News Corp arena. Consequences. Some influential ethical systems look primarily at consequences as ways to judge what is ethically good or not. Utilitarianism. A philosophical approach that says that whatever does the most good for the most number of people is best. Social marketing is a great example of this strategy because it seeks to challenge behavior for the better, such as to encourage people to stop smoking or drinking. Social justice, which is similar to or which is outlined in the figure that you see here, the art of change in the act of social justice, suggests that the consequence based principle extends to the utilitarian notion of the greatest good to an interpretation of the most fairness for everyone. It is based on the 21st century philosopher John Rawls' veil of ignorance idea that calls on people to consider the impact of an action or decision on everyone involved, pretending to step away from their usual roles. Understanding other viewpoints, then, is key to effective media communications. And social justice is really important. We see this a lot now, especially it concerns people of color, police brutality, women's rights, anything dealing with a marginalized group or an oppressed group. Usually social justice narratives are what are typically applied to make sure that we're putting ourselves in other people's shoes and sharing that lived experience, even if we can't physically do so, using the skills and the privileges and the resources that we have to make sure that we make it an even playing field for everyone. Finally, consequence-based actions and ethics. So the Subway food chain launched an advertising campaign that focused on the shopping behavior of children. Parents looked on secretly as their kids made a myriad of choices, especially as it concerns bad food. Subway wanted to sway the viewer to the belief that its selection of sandwiches would be the better choice. Subway was supposedly using utilitarian principles and trying to promote the greatest food for the greatest number, but it was actually viewed as leading people on. Relationship or dialogical ethics. Dialogical ethics are registered and regarded as a system in which ethics can be judged by the attitudes and behaviors demonstrated by each participant in a communication transaction. Professions such as advertising or PR would seem to be unethical from a dialogical ethics perspective because they are using people as means to an end. In the current climate of social media, it is increasingly important for companies to join the dialogue and listen to their consumers. Ethics of care. Feminist ethics challenges many of the traditional ethics systems in modern society. The justice-based ethical system is replaced by a caring-based system. The one caring and the cared for. In society, gender roles reinforce the dominance of men, and mass comm often supports this worldview. The promotion of caring for each other is regarded as an alternative way of conceptualizing communication with gender equality in mind. This principle actually emphasizes the importance of relationships, but places a greater normative emphasis on the relationship. It challenges the assumption that male means normal. And so specifically, I put this picture here of Amber Rose and Blac Chyna because of the relevance of Amber Rose slut walk and even her slut wear, kind of shaming people who describe them as such and redefining what it means to be a stripper, a slut, or described as a hoe, or some of the other terms that they are wearing on their clothing. And so this could be looked at as a formalized ethic of care because Amber Rose and Blac Chyna feel like, in their articulations at least, that they are showcasing some form of feminism that counters the hegemonic ideology of our modern day society. Secondly, dialogical ethics in action. When McDonald's launched a Twitter campaign in 2012 to gather consumers' experiences, they did not anticipate that so many of the responses would be negative. People wrote about food poisoning and how bad they felt after consuming McDonald's food. This turned into a public relations nightmare for the company. It also served as a cautionary tale for other companies who were worried about opening up to social media. And you'll see that now McDonald's has changed that. They may not have necessarily changed their food, but they have changed the way that they go about talking about their food and talking to their customers. They have boxes set up all around this country. There were some actually set up in DC and New York that I actually physically saw and went up to. And those boxes were to allow people to come and talk to an automated system about their experiences and get information and real facts about the food and kind of change the narrative. I think some of these are still listed online and you can go and view them if you want. But it is important that when consumers are speaking, again, that organizations open themselves up to hear what they have to say, but that they are prepared for all of the different types of ideologies that consumers share. And then finally, moral relativism. This is the situationist ethics system that suggests that none of the ethical systems can be said to be better than the others. A newspaper may normally publish the names of people arrested for shoplifting, but decide not to if the shoplifter is the son of the paper's biggest advertiser, for example. So when we consider moral relativism, I think oftentimes this is something that people use most often because they think about, again, putting themselves in other people's shoes, but also if it's a business or it's an organization or it's a certain type of person's identity, we may see that they will bend the rules. And we see that all the time in the media. We see that all the time with celebrities, how certain celebrities are protected while others are extremely shaded. We see that especially with people of color. You know, you'll see certain images broadcasted of black and brown sisters and brothers, while you'll see that fairer complected individuals will have better pictures or will be talked about differently. And so, you know, because we have these issues, this showcases that this is a really, really intense and muddy space for us within the media arena, those of us who work specifically in the media, as well as those who research and study it. Please stay tuned for part 2 of this presentation.